My sister Emma volunteered to pick up my $3,000 custom wedding dress from the designer while I was busy with final wedding preparations. On my wedding morning, when I put on the dress, something felt wrong. The fabric was cheap, the beading was plastic, and the fit was terrible. The designer's receipt in Emma's purse revealed she'd returned my real dress and replaced it with a $200 knockoff. What happened next destroyed her reputation and our relationship forever. Before I dive into this story of wedding day sabotage and the most shocking family betrayal imaginable, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever had siblings undermine your special moments out of jealousy, and subscribe to True Revenge for more stories of family sabotage exposed through careful investigation. My name is Claire, I'm 27 years old, and until my wedding day 6 months ago, I believed my older sister Emma genuinely cared about my happiness. This story begins with what seemed like helpful support during wedding planning and ends with evidence that proved systematic sabotage of the most important day of my life. I got engaged to my fiancé Michael in December 2023 after dating for 4 years. We planned a June wedding for 150 guests at a beautiful lakeside venue in upstate New York. I had dreamed about this wedding since I was a little girl, and I wanted everything to be perfect. Michael and I are both software engineers with good salaries, and we'd been saving specifically for our wedding and honeymoon for 2 years. Our combined budget was $45,000, which allowed us to have the celebration we'd always envisioned without going into debt. Emma is my older sister by 3 years. She's 30, single, and works as a high school math teacher. Throughout our childhood, Emma was always the responsible, practical one, while I was considered more creative and impulsive. Our parents often praised Emma for being sensible while describing me as a dreamer. When I got engaged, Emma's reaction was mixed. She congratulated me and Michael, but she immediately began making comments about wedding costs and what she considered excessive spending. $3,000 for flowers, she said when I mentioned my florist budget. You could buy a used car for that amount. The venue costs how much per person? She'd ask, shaking her head disapprovingly. I could feed a family of 4 for a month on what you're spending on one dinner party. Emma positioned herself as the voice of reason in our family, constantly pointing out how my wedding expenses could be better utilized for practical purposes like house down payments, retirement savings, or emergency funds. I'm just trying to help you make smart financial decisions, she'd say when I pointed out that her comments were hurtful. Someone needs to keep you grounded in reality. Criticism became particularly intense when I chose my wedding dress. I had always dreamed of wearing a custom-designed gown, and I spent months researching designers and visiting boutiques. I finally fell in love with a dress designed by Isabella Martinez, a local designer known for her intricate beadwork and flowing silhouettes. The dress cost $3,000, which was within my budget and exactly what I had allocated for my wedding attire. It was ivory silk with hand-sewn crystal beading, a fitted bodice, and a dramatic train. The moment I put it on during my consultation, I knew it was perfect. When I showed Emma the photos from my fitting, her reaction was immediate and harsh. $3,000 for one dress you'll wear for one day, she said, looking at me like I'd lost my mind. Claire, that's completely irresponsible. You could invest that money and have it grow for decades. Emma, this is my wedding dress, I replied. It's important to me and it's within our budget. It's wasteful, she insisted. No dress should cost more than a car payment. You're being manipulated by the wedding industry into spending ridiculous amounts on things that don't matter. Emma continued to criticize my dress choice throughout the planning process. She'd make comments about people who have more money than sense and how some brides prioritize appearances over financial responsibility. I could find you an identical dress online for $200, she'd say. Nobody would know the difference, and you'd save $2,800 for important things. Her constant negativity about my dress choice began affecting my excitement about the wedding. I started second-guessing my decision and wondering if I was being frivolous with money. Michael defended my choices and told me to ignore Emma's criticism. Claire, this is our wedding, he said. We saved for this specifically, and you deserve to have the dress you love. Don't let Emma's jealousy ruin your happiness. You think she's jealous? I asked. I think she's single, watching her younger sister get married and taking out her frustration on your wedding plans, Michael replied. Her comments aren't about financial responsibility, they're about her own issues. As my wedding approached, the final preparations became increasingly hectic. I was coordinating with vendors, finalizing guest lists, and handling last-minute details while still working full-time. 2 weeks before the wedding, I had my final dress fitting with Isabella. The dress was perfect, every bead placed precisely, every seam tailored to my measurements. Isabella's assistant carefully packed the dress in a preservation box with detailed care instructions. Your dress will be ready for pickup on Thursday, Isabella told me. Make sure whoever picks it up handles the box carefully and keeps it upright during transport. Thursday was an impossible day for me to get away from work. I had a crucial project deadline, and my boss had made it clear that I needed to be present for the final client presentation. That's when Emma volunteered to help. Claire, you're so stressed trying to handle everything, she said during our weekly family dinner. Let me pick up your dress for you. I can get it after school and bring it directly to your apartment. I hesitated, remembering her constant criticism of the dress, but Emma seemed genuinely eager to help. I know I've been critical about the cost, she continued, but I want your wedding day to be perfect. This is something concrete I can do to support you during this busy time. Michael was working late that evening, and I was overwhelmed with wedding tasks. Emma's offer seemed like a genuine gesture of sisterly support. That would be incredibly helpful, I admitted. Just please be careful with the box. Isabella said the dress needs to stay upright and protected. Emma assured me she'd treat the dress like precious cargo and deliver it safely to my apartment. The next evening, Emma arrived at my apartment with a white preservation box that looked identical to the one I'd seen at Isabella's boutique. One wedding dress delivered safely, she announced, setting the box carefully in my bedroom closet. Isabella's assistant said everything looks perfect. I thanked Emma profusely for her help and offered to take her out to dinner as appreciation for her support. She declined, saying she had papers to grade, but seemed pleased that she'd been able to help with something important. The week before the wedding passed in a blur of final preparations. I didn't open the dress box because I wanted to save the moment of putting on my dress for the actual wedding morning. I had arranged for my photographer to capture me getting dressed, and I wanted the experience to be special. My wedding morning arrived with perfect weather, sunny skies, and comfortable temperatures. My bridesmaids gathered in my bridal suite at the hotel, and my photographer was ready to document every moment of the preparation process. Okay, Claire, let's get you in your dress, said my maid of honor, Jessica, as she carefully lifted the preservation box from my garment bag. I watched excitedly as Jessica opened the box and lifted out the dress. Even before she held it up, something looked wrong. The dress looked similar to my custom gown, but the fabric appeared different, cheaper, and less lustrous. The beading that should have been crystal looked plastic, and the overall construction seemed less refined. Claire, is this the right dress? Jessica asked, holding up the gown with a confused expression. I took the dress from her hands and immediately knew something was terribly wrong. The fabric felt completely different, synthetic instead of silk. The beading was obviously fake, with a plastic quality that caught the light all wrong. Construction was sloppy, with visible seams and uneven hemming. This isn't my dress, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My bridesmaids gathered around, examining the gown. It was clearly a cheap imitation of my custom design, similar in color and general style, but inferior in every detail. Could there have been a mix-up at the designer? Asked my bridesmaid, Sarah. I called Isabella immediately, my hand shaking as I dialed. Isabella, this is Claire. I'm looking at the dress that was picked up yesterday, and it's not my custom gown. It looks like a cheap copy. There was silence on the other end before Isabella responded, her voice confused and concerned. Claire, your sister Emma picked up your dress as scheduled, but she also returned it the same day, saying there had been a change of plans. She said you'd decided the dress was too expensive and wanted to exchange it for something more affordable. My heart stopped. She returned my dress? Yes, she brought it back about 2 hours after picking it up. She had a receipt from an online retailer showing that a replacement dress had been ordered. She said you'd realized the original dress was financially irresponsible and wanted something more practical. I asked Isabella to check her records and confirm exactly what had happened. According to her documentation, Emma had picked up my dress at 3:30 p.m., then returned at 5:45 p.m. with a story about my change of heart. I was surprised, Isabella admitted, because you'd seemed so happy with the dress during all our fittings. But your sister was very convincing about your financial concerns and seemed to know details about our conversations. Isabella confirmed that Emma had returned my $3,000 custom dress and received a full refund, claiming I had decided to purchase a more affordable option online. I hung up and stared at the cheap knockoff hanging in my bridal suite, 2 hours before my wedding ceremony was scheduled to begin. My bridesmaids were horrified when I explained what Emma had done. Jessica immediately began calling local bridal shops to see if we could find a replacement dress, while Sarah searched online for emergency options. But I realized I had a more pressing need than finding a new dress. I needed proof of what Emma had done before I confronted her. Jessica, can you call Emma and ask her to come to the bridal suite immediately? I asked. Tell her there's an emergency with the dress and I need her help. While waiting for Emma, I called Isabella back and asked her to email me documentation of the pickup and return, including any receipts or notes from Emma's visits. I also asked my photographer to document the knockoff dress thoroughly, photographing the cheap fabric, plastic beading, and poor construction that proved it wasn't my custom gown. 20 minutes later, Emma arrived at the bridal suite looking concerned but not surprised. "What's wrong with the dress?" she asked, glancing at the knockoff hanging on the closet door. "Emma, this isn't my dress," I said calmly. "This is a cheap imitation of my custom gown. Can you explain how this happened?" Emma's expression shifted to something defensive. "What do you mean it's not your dress?" "That's the dress I picked up from Isabella." "No, you picked up my dress and then returned it," I corrected her. Isabella confirmed that you brought my dress back and told her I'd changed my mind about spending $3,000. Emma's face went pale, but she maintained her defensive posture. "I don't know what Isabella told you, but I just picked up the dress you ordered and brought it here," she insisted. I pulled out my phone and showed her the email from Isabella documenting the pickup and return times, along with notes about Emma's explanation for the return. "According to Isabella's records, you returned my custom dress and said I decided it was financially irresponsible and wanted something more practical," I read from the email. Emma's composure began to crack. There must be some misunderstanding. Emma, I need you to be honest with me," I said. "Did you return my wedding dress?" The room was completely silent as my bridesmaids, photographer, and I waited for Emma's response. Finally, Emma broke down. "Yes, I returned it," she admitted, tears starting to flow. "But I was trying to help you. $3,000 for one dress is insane, Claire. You would have regretted that purchase for years." Confession stunned everyone in the room, even though we'd already figured out what had happened. "You returned my wedding dress without my permission?" I asked, needing to hear her say it clearly. "I bought you a replacement that looks exactly the same," Emma protested. "Nobody would know the difference, and you'd save $2,800 that could be used for important things." Jessica spoke up. "Emma, everyone can tell the difference. This dress is obviously cheap and poorly made. And more importantly," I added, "you stole my wedding dress. You returned my custom gown and left me with a knockoff on my wedding morning." Emma tried to justify her actions. "I was protecting you from making a terrible financial decision. You'll thank me later when you're not still paying off wedding debt." "Emma, I paid for my dress in full months ago with money I specifically saved for my wedding," I replied. "And even if I hadn't, you had no right to return my property without my permission. Where's the money from returning my dress?" I asked. Emma looked increasingly uncomfortable. I put it in a savings account for you. I was going to give it to you after the wedding as a surprise. Show me the account, I demanded. Emma claimed she didn't have the information with her, but promised to transfer the money back to me after the wedding. This point, I realized I had bigger problems than Emma's theft. I was getting married in less than 2 hours and had no appropriate dress to wear. That's when my photographer made an unexpected suggestion. Claire, I photographed a wedding last month where the bride had a backup dress, she said. It's a long shot, but I could call her and see if she'd be willing to lend you something. The bride from the previous wedding was incredibly generous. She lived nearby and rushed over with 3 dresses in different styles. One of them, a simple but elegant A-line gown, fit me perfectly. Keep it, she insisted when I tried to arrange rental payment. Every bride deserves to feel beautiful on her wedding day. I managed to get married on schedule wearing a borrowed dress that was lovely, though completely different from what I'd planned. But Emma's sabotage had far-reaching consequences beyond just the wedding day. After the ceremony, I confronted Emma privately about the money from returning my dress. I want the $2,800 you got from returning my custom dress, I told her. Emma admitted she had spent the money on her summer vacation, claiming she'd borrowed it with plans to pay me back gradually. So you stole my wedding dress, replaced it with a cheap knockoff, and spent the refund money on yourself? I summarized. Emma tried to minimize her actions. I was going to pay you back over time. And you looked beautiful in the other dress. Nobody knew the difference. Everyone knew the difference, Emma. And more importantly, you committed theft and fraud. You forged my identity to return merchandise that didn't belong to you. I gave Emma 48 hours to return the full $2,800 refund money, or I would file a police report for theft and fraud. Emma panicked when she realized the legal implications of what she'd done. She'd used my name to return merchandise without my permission, kept the refund money for personal use, and replaced my property with inferior goods. She managed to borrow money from our parents to pay me back, though she had to confess to them what she'd done to explain why she needed $2,800 immediately. Our parents were horrified when they learned Emma had sabotaged my wedding dress out of jealousy and financial judgment. Emma, how could you do something so cruel to your sister on her wedding day? Our mother asked during a family meeting after the wedding. Emma continued to justify her actions as trying to help and preventing financial irresponsibility, but our parents didn't accept these explanations. You stole Claire's wedding dress and ruined her wedding morning, our father said. There's no justification for that behavior. The incident permanently damaged Emma's relationship with our entire family. Our parents struggled to trust her judgment and began questioning other times she'd been helpful in ways that served her own interests. Emma's reputation was further damaged when word spread among our extended family and mutual friends about what she'd done. People were shocked that someone would sabotage their own sister's wedding out of jealousy and financial control issues. Several family members who had previously admired Emma's practical approach to money began to see her behavior as controlling and manipulative rather than sensible. Emma's attempts to repair our relationship were unsuccessful. She offered various apologies and explanations, but never took full responsibility for the malicious nature of her actions. I made a mistake trying to help, she'd say, rather than acknowledging that she deliberately sabotaged my wedding because she disagreed with my choices. 6 months later, Emma and I have minimal contact. She attends family gatherings, but we don't have personal conversations or spend time together outside of required family events. The experience taught me several important lessons about family relationships and boundary violations. First, family members who constantly criticize your choices and claim to know better may be motivated by jealousy or control issues rather than genuine concern for your welfare. Second, people who position themselves as the practical or responsible voice in the family may use those labels to justify manipulative and harmful behavior. Third, financial disagreements don't excuse theft, fraud, or sabotage. Emma's belief that my dress was too expensive didn't give her the right to return it without my permission. Most importantly, documentation and evidence are crucial when confronting family members who commit crimes against you. Isabella's records of Emma's pickup and return were essential for proving what had happened. Today, Michael and I are happily married and have recovered financially from the wedding expenses, including the cost of replacing my stolen dress. We have clear boundaries with family members about our financial decisions and don't tolerate criticism disguised as helpful advice. Emma continues to struggle with the consequences of her actions. She lost the trust of our family, damaged her reputation among our friends, and destroyed her relationship with me over her inability to respect my choices and boundaries. The borrowed dress I wore at my wedding was beautiful, and my photographer captured wonderful images of our ceremony. But I'll always regret that Emma's jealousy and control issues robbed me of wearing the custom gown I dreamed about and saved for. If you've experienced family sabotage of important life events, know that such behavior is not acceptable regardless of the claimed motivations. Family members don't have the right to override your choices because they disagree with your decisions. If you enjoyed this story of wedding dress theft and the designer receipts that exposed a sister's jealousy, please give this video a like and subscribe to True Revenge for more stories of family sabotage and the evidence that brought justice. Share your own experiences with jealous siblings in the comments below. Have you ever had family members undermine your special moments because they disagreed with your choices? Remember that your wedding day and your choices deserve respect, and anyone who sabotages your special occasions out of jealousy has prioritized their feelings over your happiness. Thank you for listening to my story of wedding day sabotage and the receipts that proved my sister's theft. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones most willing to hurt us when they can't control our decisions.